conference. Today is the first day of June, we're going to be here. I'm quite certain the leader of the opposition has a lot to test. I know I asked about Bharrat Jagdeo, leader of the opposition.
Well, thank you very much. I've been speaking to some members of the media, and I had promised them to respond to various issues that they would from time to time call me on at a press conference. So today I'm going to make a short opening statement and then allow you to raise all the issues that you wanted to raise with me some time back. So first of all, let me say that there has been quite a bit of controversy over what took place at the flag-raising ceremony. And I'm sure that that will come up at today's press conference. Let me quickly give you my account of what took place. And because I believe we need to just put this past us and move on. We should not dwell on it. Our country deserves better. We have to move forward. Most of you here would recall that I was asked several months ago whether we will participate in the celebrations of the 50th anniversary of our country. And I said yes, that whilst there are some serious concerns on the part of the People's Progressive Party about how the event is planned, the partisan nature of the planning process, particularly in New York and other places where hardcore activists of the APNU were leading the planning process. We had concerns about how much money was being spent and where it's being spent, because there seems to be very little transparency surrounding the events themselves and how much will be spent on them. So you would recall we had asked about the Durban Park project several times, including a question in Parliament. What's the scope of this project? How large would it be? If there is no money in the budget, who will fund it? We're told that it will be funded from private donations. We asked whether these private donations will be recorded and made public, and whether those individuals are beneficiaries of other government contracts. Then at some point in time, the government did not give any explanation, did not make available the list of donors. I think when the news media broke the story that the quality of the work that was being done there could jeopardize public funds as well as the safety of the event, we saw the government switched and they said, we're going to put $150 million into the park. We're not sure how much that figure was finally, and we're not sure what the procurement process was. So not only with that event, but several others, we questioned the use of money. But notwithstanding everything that I said about the partisan nature of the planning process, the lack of transparency surrounding the spending, the grave concerns that we had about involvement of people, we said we will participate in the celebration of our 50th anniversary. We will go to those sessions that are formal in nature and that are dignified, because this country belongs to all of our people. This is not an APNU event. That's what we thought. This is a national event. It belongs to all of us Guyanese. So we showed up in Parliament for the President's speech on independence. Then we were read a second speech by the Prime Minister coming from the President. And we had signaled a long time before that we will be at the flag raising ceremony. So it was clear from a long time ago that we were going to attend the flag raising ceremony. Around the 23rd or the 24th, Gail Teixeira told me that there seems to have been some confusion surrounding seating, because somewhere the minister was reported to have said that they have 1,000 VIP seats, and it will be on a first come, first served basis. So having heard that, I did not want to expose our members of Parliament to a mad scramble for seats. So I said to Gail Teixeira, I'll speak with the minister in the Parliament. I saw her there on the 24th, and I asked her specifically quite a few things in the presence of some of our MPs. Would there be seats reserved for members of Parliament, etc.? And she said, yes, there will be seats reserved for members of Parliament. The following day, that was on the 24th, 25th, I asked Gail Teixeira to again call the minister to confirm the arrangements, which she did, and she got the assurance once again that there will be seats. We left, I said to our members of Parliament, before we left the Parliament, we'd all go together in a single bus, because I suspect parking will be a problem, given the large nature of the event, etc. So we'll go together in a bus, although the minister said to me there'll be separate arrangements for me as leader of the opposition, and I suspect as a former president. So we gathered at 9 o'clock by the leader of the opposition office, and we left somewhere close to about maybe 9:30, 9:40 for the event. She said to us we'd had to be there for 9:45. So we got there. Of course, there was confusion at all the gates. So we wound our way in, the bus wound its way in, and we disembarked. And then there was a huge crowd at one of the entrance, and we had to push our way through the crowd to get there. But we are not unique in this, because I saw Rupert Roopnarine standing there, because he had just entered, or he had been there for a while. And then after we got in, I saw Cathy Hughes pushing her way through the crowd, Nigel Hughes, etc. So the first point is that we arrived before some ministers. But this will be important when we come back to timelines. Then we were escorted. We went to the VIP area, and I did an interview with the media saying we were happy to be here today, etc. I did an interview, I think it was the state media, just at the bottom of the step, and we went up. And then, standing there for a couple of minutes or so, I was escorted and seated, myself and Samuel Hines. I keep saying Prime Minister, but former President Samuel Hines. So we were escorted, and then subsequently I saw Ed Shale, Rohi, and Anil Nandalal were brought on the other side too and seated with us. This was before the Prime Minister arrived ceremonially and before the President arrived. So we were sitting in our seats there, at least myself and Prime Minister Samuel, before the arrival of the Prime Minister and before the arrival of the President. I looked over, after about 15 minutes, I looked over, sitting there, and I saw, well, it's not that, our members of Parliament, all of them, excepting the 5 of us, were still standing there with their families and everyone in the corridor, the passageway. And people were being escorted past them. I saw Sian Sharma being escorted past them and being brought into the VIP area. A number of other individuals brought into the VIP area. I said to Basil Williams then, I said, this is unacceptable, that you can't have our members of Parliament be standing there. And he, I think, to be fair to him, he was just as displeased. He may not say it now publicly, but he was displeased too. Dominic Gaskin then came in, and he was with a little baby, and he said to me, he was walking up and down, and he couldn't find a seat for him too. And then subsequently, they found a seat in the VIP area. The minister then approached me, after this was going on for a while. She approached me and I said to her, you promised, you said that there would be seats. And she said, yes, I made the commitment. She never told me I'm looking for seats. That's one. Second, that there will be seated. And I made it clear to her that if you don't find seats in another 5-10 minutes, we will leave. And this happened. She disappeared. Our members of Parliament were left there standing with their family members, etc., in the corridor. Some people were being escorted in. And in the meantime, the Prime Minister arrived, he and his family, and they were seated. The President arrived, and he was seated. And then I said to them, this is unacceptable, and we left. The reason I'm recounting all of this is that the minister said we arrived late. That's not true. We arrived before some ministers and before the Prime Minister and the President arrived. We arrived on time. Secondly, she created the impression that I arrived at the same time as the President, and I basically conveying the impression I sought to upstage him. I arrived in the bus with our members of Parliament, not separately. I think they saw my vehicle going to the parking area and she assumed, or she got a report that I was in the vehicle. But I was not in the vehicle. I arrived there in the bus, and I was seated there. So the vehicle may have been circling for parking, etc., for a while, my vehicle, but I had arrived a long time before that. So that was also erroneous. I saw the Prime Minister saying, I said we would leave the walkout. But, you know, this guy sings for his supper. And I'll deal with him in a few moments about the act of cowardice that he had in Parliament, but that he on the rice motion. But we had to be really silly to tell the minister not to find seats for us so that we could walk out. You know, it's really pushing it, because we were there, we made it clear, etc. But as usual, he's irrelevant. The walk-in, we had to leave. It's almost the humiliation. I believe it was designed to humiliate people, but at worst it's incompetence. But either way, I couldn't stay there as a leader and watch all of our MPs with their spouses, etc., just standing there in the corridor. When you have a VIP area, or the two areas, with 1,000 seats, and they couldn't find space for 25 of them. 1,000 seats. These are members of parliament. And when I looked at what the people who were there, half of them were revelers, it seems, who were there. And so that was the reason we left. And so this attempt to portray, I've seen various attempts to spin this issue. It's not, it was a clear case, not of just protocol, because we're not big sticklers, just of decency. Decency. If you invite people, particularly members of parliament, they should be seated. You can't have them being humiliated standing in the corridor. And so all the protocols were respected. Which entrance we went through, you know, because it was so confusing, but we got in there. That's what the minister sought to focus on in her press release, that we went through some entrance and whatever happened there and all of that. We got there to the VIP area on time before the arrival of the Prime Minister and the President, long before that. That's one issue. The second issue is, has to do with the Parliament itself. You may know that we have been trying for a very long time to get a list of people, or the list of people who were released by the President a year ago from the prisons, or pardoned by the President. Our argument is that the President has the power to issue pardons, but the country, he has a right to know who he pardoned. Not that we are questioning his authority to pardon, but the country has a right to know. This matter has been treated like a state secret. Under the Freedom of Information Act, first of all, we raised this issue hoping that public pressure would cause the President and the others to release the list, that he would direct his staff to do so. This failed. We tried almost 6-8 months raising questions at press conferences, etc. It failed. We then applied to using the Freedom of Information Act to the Commissioner of Information for this information. He wrote us and he said, you have to seek this first of all from the primary source. So we wrote the Office of the President asking them for this information. Silent. We have recently written, we have placed a question in Parliament requesting this information. Now, Parliament is supposed to be the supreme body for transparency. Questions asked of ministers, etc., and even of the President should be answered there. We have just received a notice from the Speaker that he would not allow our questions on the question. So this speaker has demonstrated a pattern of behavior. He seems to think that every act of the president, where he has to take his lead from the president, not be accountable for the stewardship of the National Assembly. When the president said that the rice industry was a private industry, the speaker denied our motion using the same claim, that it's a private industry. We retabled that motion, and only recently, you recall when we placed it there the first time, that was his explanation. And we retabled it, and only recently it was debated. When we dealt with said that we wanted the matter discussed urgently, the closure of wheels, this speaker indicated that he would not allow it because the government has already pronounced, basically, and that the closure will take place over the course of the year. Now that a decision was made. If you're going to reverse the decision, you have to do it immediately. And now this third issue, we have seen how the speaker has acted. This is apart from the numerous other instances that we have pointed out, and the numerous instances where the government has suspended the standing orders, violated every single parliamentary norm to get their way in Parliament. So I've had some discussions with several people, including I met the Commonwealth Secretary General, person I've known for a long time, a few days ago, and I've raised this issue. We raised it with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association about the new norm for parliamentary matters in Guyana, how this APNU government sees parliamentary democracy, and it departs radically from the convention and from the Westminster model. And so we are worried now that our voices would be muzzled in Parliament too. So let me use the press conference to once again point out to you how the government sees these motions. Normally, the motion is the last person to speak on a motion is the presenter of the motion. So we saw a departure in the Parliament the last time when we were debating the rice motion. The motion was in Irfan Ali's name. He finished speaking, and Nagamutu jumped up, and then he proceeded to give a long speech about the rice industry. He did so, and I said it there, because he's a coward. He could have spoken just before Irfan Ali, but he was afraid that Irfan Ali would have responded to him, or I would have spoken after him. And this is this same fear that drives him not to have to respect the convention at budget time, where the leader of the opposition is the penultimate speaker. So he's worried about speaking before me because his speeches are vacuous, hollow. They lack substance. He plays to the gallery. He is very insecure, so he believes that only by criticizing the PPP and by being rabidly hostile to the PPP and its policies and its history, that he can keep his place in that configuration in which he feels so insecure. He has no power, absolutely. He enjoys a position. And so let me give you a few things that he said. The PPP did a bad job. They tear gassed the rice farmers. And they dropped someone's pans in the Essequibo Coast. Some man who dropped his pans. Remember the story? One of their activists who now is working for them. And that the Dawa pump had sand, and he had to go and personally crawl in there and scoop out the sand from the Dawa pump. And how he fixed one pump somewhere in Berbice. And this is that this government is so sympathetic to rice farmers because they did that. And I kept wondering, you know, that with all the hostility that the PPP had for their rice farmers, according to Nagamutu, they produced over 650,000 tons of rice in 2014, the highest level ever in our history, last year. The highest level ever in our history. So what would have happened if we liked them? We hated them so much that they produced the highest level of rice in our history. If we had loved these rice farmers, maybe we'd be producing 10 million tons of rice. But you can see the hollowness in his speech. It sounds good. The sound bites are good. But he talks about the Dawa pump. We're fixing one pump, which was in train already. And he had to acknowledge that these pumps, several pumps were bought under the PPP that they are now installing. And he ignores totally the statement by the president that this is a private industry, the falsehood that they perpetrated on the country and the rice farmers when the Minister of Finance announced in the first budget of the coalition government that there was $23 billion of subsidy for the rice industry, and they received zero. He doesn't talk about the $2.3 billion that we left in GRDB, where they've used nearly $500 million to single-source fertilizer to a group of people, and you've seen this, that are known to many AFC members, single source to them. Doesn't talk about the 16% VAT that they surreptitiously sneaked in back on heavy equipment in the last budget that will harm not just the rice industry, but if you buy a combine now, it's about $4 million more you have to pay because of the 16% VAT that they've reintroduced on heavy equipment, on tractor, etc. But it will also have a devastating impact on mining and many other sectors. Doesn't talk anything about the policies. He doesn't talk about what is happening in the Mexican market. You remember in his usual flair for PR, he went and he was a savior of the rice industry and went to Mexico and got a big contract, he said, and that next year, that is, this year, the contract would materialize. Where is that contract after spending our money on that trip? Nothing of this sort. So this is Nagamutu. Secondly, he said the Petro-Caribbean funds were somehow mismanaged. And let me tell you, when Nagamutu talks numbers, he does one thing that most people fail to do with me. He confuses me. So because he has no respect for numbers. So he said we spent $100 million from Petro-Caribbean on the in the housing sector, it was $10 million. We made it clear that the Petro-Caribbean account was used primarily to finance the trade in rice. You would recall the first week they said that money was missing after the coalition government came into office. Where is the audit of the Petro-Caribbean funds? I've called for an international audit of the Petro-Caribbean funds. Where is this audit if the resources are missing? It's true we spent $140 million or so for GPL to put in new power plants at Kingston, etc., from the oil proceeds, and that formed part of our debt to Venezuela. $10 million for the housing sector, and $16 million for the Hope Canal. These were the three projects. Close to $600 million was spent to finance the rice trade, and that meant no debt to the country, because although we had borrowed against the the supply of oil, we then retired the debt. And when you saw Jordan announce in this budget that the stock of debt had reduced from about 50% of GDP to about 48% of GDP, he was just signing off on the instruments retiring those debts. That is why, the Petro-Caribbean debts. So he, clueless again. But he was a coward because he used the occasion to grandstand and to talk, and because they were slammed, they were battered in the debate on that motion about the lack of concern for the industry. And so he sought that mechanism. So my concern about Parliament is growing, about how it's being treated. Look at the long gap again. We're not sure when Parliament will be held. We have tons of things to discuss in the Parliament, but the government treats Parliament conveniently. When ministers have to travel, the highest forum, in legislative forum in the country, cannot meet. It has to await ministers traveling. I'm going to end there, and because there's so many diverse questions that you have called me on, and I promised to address here today. So I want to give time for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No questions?
Yeah, sure.
You said you believe this time of behind us, and equally some of your supporters were angry and went to social media to vent that frustration.
Yeah.
What do you see as your supporters put this behind us?
I just said it on national television. It's time we put this behind us.
Yeah, two questions.
But we could have done better. Really, it pains me to see this, because it's our country, regardless of who, as I said in Parliament, who is in power now. It's the image of our country that matters. And when things that are so simple, I think it was one newspaper that said, it's such a simple thing to do, just to put reserve for 200 seats. You know, just reserve on that, and then have the ushers say, ministers, members of parliament, others will go here. That's all you need to do. You know, basic things. And have ushers who, you know, will direct those people to those seats. And then, I don't want to comment on the gala dinner, but really, we can do better as a country. We organize a small state dinner, a regular thing. And there's some, when there's state organized functions, they have to meet some standards. Anyhow, don't get into that one. Let me don't get into that one, because I don't want to be today to focus on those things. we need to just move on. Yes. On the same matter? No, well then let me finish. He has a supplement. No, after the experience, some of our MPs called and I said, we may be sucker for punishment if we go to the second one to do that, because there's no assurance that it would be any different. We didn't receive a call to say, well, this one will be any different. So some people said, don't be a sucker for punishment.
You spoke about women, so I just wanted to ask, what do you think the walkout did for the people?
As I said before, the night was a special night, and I said it in my interview. It was a special night. It's 50th independence of our anniversary. People were happy. I spoke with lots of people, and they were there, and the mood was good. Everything was good among the people, perfect. It's just the disorganization. And that's why I wanted people to know that it had nothing to do with our respect for our country or our flag or anything else. It's just the humiliation that took place. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. Yeah.
Show that it's not so much the seating, it would show the incompetence of the people ultimately responsible, but it would show that you can rise above seating and stand for your country instead of walking out. How would you respond to that?
I don't think anyone can question the patriotism of PVP people. I've been president of this country for over 12 years. And so a lot of the decisions on the safety of our borders, the integrity of our borders, lots of the decisions concerning national security and well-being were in my hands. And so I respect all the symbols of nationhood. And this country is special to all of us. But what sort of leader would I have been if I did not show that basically that this is unacceptable? The humiliation, you weren't there. And you could not see the faces of the members of parliament. I looked over. And maybe many of them don't want to admit it. But I looked over. And it's not a very good thing when you see people taking pictures. Just this mass of people. 90% of them I've never, maybe I haven't seen. So they're not like prominent Guyanese, including a lot of people told me they made donations. And they never got an invitation. They made donations to the construction, the Durban Park thing. These are like patriots and stuff, and they never got an invitation. And then the crowd, like some people in the crowd taking pictures and stuff, the humiliation. That was the decision at that moment. And I did not say, all right, let's go. They wanted to leave a bit early, and I kept saying to them, hold on, because it was, and I sought to address it. I spoke with Basil Williams, I spoke with Nicolette Henry, I even raised it with Dominic Gaskin. He said to me, I'm in the same boat, but eventually a seat was found for him. And so that was the thing. It was the moment, but it had nothing to do with that. Yes? Yes. Yeah, sure.
In relation to the Nigel Daramlal IDP issues, Mr. Loki was met with Mr. Daramlal yesterday. Haven't been briefed as yet, or
We have our executive meeting on Friday, so I suspect Rohi will, at that meeting, brief us about the nature of the conversation they had.
Well, as leader of your party in National Assembly, of which Mr. Garamlal is a member of the Assembly,
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any reservations as to what you will consider his position in the House?
I will listen carefully to the issue. Apparently, the file is gone to the DPP, and so he has been advised. He's been advised by his lawyer not to say anything because it may be prejudicial to what takes place in the DPP's chambers. The matter is now going to, I guess we'll hear from the DPP's chambers soon. And therefore, we will return to this matter at some point in time when it's not in this delicate stage where it can influence what the DPP has said. But clearly, he has to give solid explanations, believable explanations to the executive of the party and to us. He has to give those because it is a serious matter. The allegations are serious. The allegations are serious.
Sir, that the filings with the DPP, I mean, one that shows the severity of the issue. When you look at other cases regarding...
No. Let's do with that one. The file is with the DPP, which says it's the severity of the issue. Barry Ramsaran file was with the DPP, and he is charged for something like abusive language. I was hoping that abusive language. Yeah. So okay, all right. Let's go on then. Because people have different perspectives on these things. But apparently, now it's came out that the threat, the so-called threat, because they said it was a threat made against a young lady in Barbies, but she was not in the earshot, like close by to hear the threat. So that's why it changed. But yeah, go on. Sure. Yeah.
As Ms. Westford, do you think it speaks to your party's position possibly on how you deal with these issues?
Yeah.
Will still sit in the National Assembly
Yeah.
even though they're before the courts?
Yes. No. I think we have a clear position. If the government finds any act, that's relation because you mentioned former Minister Westford. We have made it clear in all of the audits. Anytime you find anyone who is corrupt or has broken the law, they should charge these people. The state should proceed to lay charges against them. They will have to use the mechanism of the court to establish whether they're innocent or not. And the reason why we have a greater confidence in the court than in the government being fair. Because if you look at the audits, how they started, the partisan people were selected to do many of the audits. Many of the audits read like the APNU manifesto. They read like, sensationalizing issues without following. There are clear accounting conventions that you have to follow. They depart radically from those. And one of the primary things is that you should give people a chance to respond to the allegations made. A management letter. When you finish an audit, you then send something to management and say, here are our findings. And we want you to respond to these findings. In many cases, people have responded, and there is no account taken of the response. They've given explanations for various things. And many of the explanations may make the original finding laughable in the first place. Secondly, many have not been given that opportunity. Many have not been given. And so I have asked that they publish all the audits that have been done, and to them, like give it out to the media, and give their response of the agencies to the audit queries. Then the media could form a balanced opinion. They can still proceed with the charges if they want, because that's a subjective thing and they'd send it up forward. But I have grave concerns about how some of these investigations are done. And that's why I've asked for foreign or non-partisan people to do the investigations. And I'm not going to move people just like that because of what I see as allegations. Allegations, when just like that. There are many, many allegations, almost on a daily basis about me. Not daily basis, you see these allegations. Now it's time to prove these allegations. It's put up or shut up. And I have argued that one way of putting up was to agree to our motion in Parliament. Let us make public our tax records and our 10 years of our assets that we declared, so the whole country will see it. And another way is to launch an international investigation into former presidents, all members of Parliament, not just ours, everyone, so it's seen as non-partisan, who have assets abroad, bank accounts abroad, etc. And I saw the president said the bulk of the corruption is in the private sector now. So you saw what he said, that most of it is in the private sector. So let us examine people who run public companies. Forget the private companies for the time being, because those are, you can go after them for tax evasion. But the public companies, the state has a fiduciary duty to protect small shareholders. And therefore, let us look at the public companies in Guyana that have all of these bank accounts and companies set up in low tax or no tax jurisdiction. Why aren't we doing much about that too? So I've asked for an international investigation of that. We can call in Interpol, or let's hire an international group. You can pay them and say, we give you a flat fee of $1 million US, and you will get, and you will get, because we spent much more on other things. And remember, they said we stashed billions abroad, so spending $1 million to find billions is not a bad investment. And so spend $1 million US to do that, and then say you get a percentage of what you find, right? So I've been calling on that. That's where you put up or shut up. And not to say, oh, there is no evidence, or like Ramjatan said now, oh, the witnesses don't want to come forward. They're afraid. Oh, they're afraid of the PVP. They were never afraid when you're in office. You know, so my argument now about these corruption issues is put up or shut up. And you know, they will find that all, and this is why the president should have asked Gulsaran at his book launching that for so many years you've been arguing that close to $28–30 billion a year were stolen from public procurement. I will give you $1 billion to save $27 billion. I'll give you $1 billion in salary now, you know, to find $27 billion that was stolen annually by the PPP. And put him and Clive Thomas and give them the $1 billion, because they've been writing a lot about this. These are the same ones who've been estimating how much drug proceeds are flowing through the economy. So it's, their figures are simply not credible. And now, so there's a big back down from all of this. And I have, anyhow, let me don't go on too much on that, because I want to come on the economy if one of you will ask me separately a question about that. So, because I was switching to the economy about how the same denial kind of syndrome is in the economy. So, yes, please.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
I just want to ask about two things. One being, several years ago, under the PPP administration, they were talking about the phasing out of the $1 and $5 bonds. And we hear the Bank of
Yeah.
saying that this is something that they are going to look at.
Yeah.
I want to ask about the implications of doing that, if any at all.
Yeah,
what
sure.
it really means. And the other thing, the commissioner, the report from the commission required income council to be handled to the president today that you've done already. Are you interested in that at all in time?
As leader of the opposition, I have to be interested in the findings. I believe the whole approach to the prisons by this administration lacks coherence. I believe that it is reflective of the same sort of incompetence that they demonstrate in the economy. I believe that Minister Ramjatan is clueless, not just Jordan, but this clueless word is popping up everywhere almost, is clueless about what to do in the security sector, in the criminal justice system. So I see he's continuing the largest project that this minister has in the budget is a $15 million project that the PPP left him, negotiated with the IDB. That's the biggest project they have now. That's what this government has in that sector. But it started off with the lack of transparency surrounding the release of prisoners. That's one. Large numbers of prisoners being released. We don't know whether some of them were in there for serious offenses or not. It can trigger discontent, because if you believe that if you act up, you may get the president's notice or someone else's notice. Secondly, when they had the problems in the prisons, what I call the riots in the prison, they set up a committee to negotiate with the prisoners. Now, this is a huge departure from convention. Once you start negotiating with the prisoners, it does not end. Because how do they get you to negotiate? They get you to negotiate by acting up all the time. And so it was a fundamental breach. Now, and I believe that a lot of the prison officers, etc., felt that they were eventually going to be victims of this probe, etc. So they started feeling a bit insecure and concerned about their own well-being and lives, etc. I agree that government has a duty to look into concerns of prisoners, but you do it in a manner that is different. You establish a small group to examine, not to negotiate, whether the concerns that they have raised are real concerns. Here we have a commission of inquiry now. The commission of inquiry should have predated the negotiation. You shouldn't have had negotiation. So I don't agree with the government's policy in relation to the prisons and the management of prisons and all of that. And I think they have created, in all the years we've been there, we did not have that issue. They talk a lot about security, but even on the security matters, they're found wanting. 17 persons lost their lives there. Someone has to bear responsibility, including the minister. And if Rohi, remember when the people in Linden lost their lives? They were calling for Rohi to go. And now they're in government. 17 persons lost their lives. Do they still share the same feeling that the minister must bear responsibility for this issue? So that's one. The central bank has to always look at administrative costs of keeping currency in circulation. So sometimes the admin costs are high, and therefore the central bank would want to simplify that and to cut costs, because every time you have to renew a coin or a note in circulation, it's a cost to the central bank. I made one comment without looking at the specific issue. Every time you have currency reform, because I was not commenting on the decision here, but let me just say, every time you have currency reform, there's a possibility that you have inflation. It drives inflation. So take, for example, if the $1 and the $5 note, right, the instruments are withdrawn, and something now costs, say, $35. How do you get that? How do you pay for it? How do you pay for it? The simple thing. That's why, and I'm not saying more right now on that. When they decide to make the decision, then I'll talk about it a bit more. Now that you've asked a question on the economy, the thing is that I saw the central bank trying to talk up the economy a little bit, I guess following directions from the minister. But this minister is very confused. First he says, there's no slowdown. What slowdown? This must be a PPP thing to talk about this slowdown, in the economy. What slowdown are you talking about? It got to be big bad PPP propaganda. Then a week later, after he was fed a convenient excuse from a religious leader that it's drug money, I saw he started parroting the drug money thing, that it got to be about drug money. And now, so moving from there is no slowdown to yes, there is a slowdown, but it's because of drug money. They are not addressing the serious issues facing people. We were told the Jubilee celebration, at least in this part, phase 1, is over. We're told that there will be an economic boost after a boom, not a boost, but a boom, which is, there's a cycle, trough, and boom. So we're supposed to be seeing this now as an upturn in the economy. Things are going to get worse because we have a government that is not acknowledging the problem. And therefore, if they don't acknowledge it, they can't fix it. So people come to me and I say to them, hold on to your money if you have money. Hold on to your money because we don't know where this is going. This will be tanking. And I saw the president said, all these buildings that are going up, somehow it must be from illegal proceeds. So I'd have to say to businessmen, don't put up another building. Don't put up another building in the city, because every time you do that and the president drives by, he will think that it is coming from drug money or illegal proceeds, and then Soku may visit you. So why would you put up another building in the city? And I can tell you the concessions are going to be taken away. They're going to revise the concessions. I heard the Minister of Finance said, well, we did what we had to do with DDL. And anybody else who come for a refund, we're not giving them. Well, it's not Jordan. They're claiming that this matter was taking a long time in court. And that's the only excuse for settling the issue. Well, let banks, DIH, and the others claim their refund, and then the state doesn't give them the refund, it's not Jordan who will decide whether they get their refund. It's the courts. And trust me, when the courts decide what the nature of the refund, I've conservatively put it at about $60 billion it will cost the Treasury, we'll break the Treasury for a year. You will see further economic problems. That one decision will cost this country dearly. And they're not paying attention to it. Because they're in the usual castle, they ring fence, they make a bad decision, and they ring fence it, and they defend it. And the defense is a silly one. Oh, we are going to challenge any attempt to claim refund. Well, you challenge it, and you'll end up in court. And any self-respecting court will have to award in favor of the competitors. Because you can't have two sets of people or three sets of people in the same sector paying different tax rates. Our laws don't provide for that. Our laws don't provide for that. So the economy will slide further. Will slide further if these people don't wake up. They can wake up because, and it's not supporters of the PPP alone that's hurting. All Guyanese are hurting. Guyanese. People are losing their cars. They can't pay their monthly installments for their cars and their homes, etc. Go to the banks. Ask the banks. It's a simple thing to do. If somebody would just do it. How many times? It's not a partisan thing. Everybody would be affected. We should be happy that this is sliding, but we're not. We're not, because we want to make sure that the economy keeps ticking. We don't want to start this back all from a too low a level.
You said that you're telling people to hold on to their money, to keep their money.
Yeah.
You said earlier. But by doing that,
Yes, yeah, but next thing is you get raided by SOKU. You get raided. It's the kind of signal that they send. Secondly, if I have money now and I have to invest in the rice industry, but I have to face another 16% tax, I have to spend $4 million more to buy a combine. Why would I want to do it now when the markets are not secure? And why would I want to, if property prices are falling all the time, why would I want to spend now when there is a possibility that prices will fall even further? My argument is they can arrest this. They can change it. They can change the narrative around the economy. They can change the policies that will promote investments, etc. It's within their hands to send the right signal, which will then say to everybody who has money, oh, it's time that we spend our money. We will release both the question. I will ask Gail to send it out today, and the letter denying the request.
Okay, next, are you as leader of the PPP now concerned with the public?
She's trying to put trouble between me and Ro here. All right, yeah, okay, all right. Personally, I don't, as leader of the opposition, I will not comment on issues of promotion and all of those things. this is, I suspect, a position of the General Secretary of the party, but I've gone to the executive meetings of the party, and as far as I'm concerned, this matter was not discussed at the executive of the party. This matter most likely will come up on Friday, because as far as I know, that there was no discussion of this matter at the executive of the party.
So you're concerned that your general secretary is speaking on behalf of the party that issues that were not discussed at the executive level?
You should ask the General Secretary this. Maybe he has spoken to some party members and this is their feeling, but that's what I go by. I go by the meetings that are discussed there. People can have individual positions too. Many times, positions as individuals. And I suspect Rohi, a lot of what Rohi has to say has to do more with him being responsible for security in the opposition. He is our parliamentary spokesperson on security matters. So a lot of what he said in this regard has to do more with his role as a rather disagreements with approaches, etc., in the government, than a secretary of the party. Sometimes these interfere or the lines are blurred. Our members of parliament in the areas where they have portfolio responsibilities, some level of latitude. They don't have to, on every matter consult with the leader of the opposition or the party on those matters. So they can make statements and they can, deal with issues without having to clear those every time with the leader of the opposition or the party. So I suspect a lot of what he has said, because of his closeness to the security sector, having been the Minister of Home Affairs, and now with responsibility for that sector in the Parliament. But the party has not discussed this matter.
Dr. I think it's actually coming. The Finance Minister said any bailout of the sugar industry or any additional funds needed for sugar will impact on the government's ability to have public servants benefit on salary.
Oh, really? Well, one. So now that, are they going to pay the public servants? That's the first thing. So, and how much? And how much are they going to pay the public servants? That's the question. Nagamutu said they had money set aside for over 100% increase in salaries to the public servants. When are they going to effect those payments? So nobody fights for the public servants anymore. Nobody. Because the public servants thought they had a champion some of them thought they had a champion in APNU. The president has said many of them are lazy and they can't expect high salary increases, etc. And therefore, is this not prejudicial to the negotiation? Is that statement going to be used to give the public servants a paltry increase in wages and salaries? So when are they going to effect their payout to public servants that Prime Minister Nagamutu, our wizard on figures, has said that they had money set aside to effect 100% increase in wages and salaries? When are they going to do that? And to link it with Gaisuko and everything else, it is saying to the public, they didn't say, when we took this big increase that will cost us probably $1 billion, the Treasury, over the 5 years, based on the large number of ministers and the salary increase they took. They did not say it will impact on the wages and salaries of the public servants. But here is Jordan talking about some bailout of sugar affecting public servants, but he has just exposed the Treasury to over $60 billion of liabilities. $60 billion of liabilities. That could have kept Wales open. It could pay $50,000 per child, school child, on transport grant per year. It could bail out sugar. It could bail out rice. It could pave all the roads in coastal Guyana, the village roads, etc. It could build 1,000 arches. It could do all of these things that he've just exposed the Treasury to. One decision, and you're concerned about the sums of money that the additional subsidies. And you know why? Because they were boasting about how, since they took over, they've done so well in sugar. You recall the articles, Chronicle carried some articles glorifying Nagamoto holding a sugar cane over his head like this and stuff like that. I'm just joking before they say I'm lying, but you know, they're holding the sugar cane over his head and how well they have done. And then saying they've done so well, and 30,000 tons shortfall. And they keep putting in these people. One is 91-year-old. I spoke about that the last time. 91 years old to run some agency in the sugar industry. Now I don't have nothing against people who are 91-year-old, because I believe we shouldn't be harassing them and putting them to work now in the sugar industry. But that's why shortfall, huge. You don't hear much about that. But how is that going to affect the growth figure? Ask Jordan now. How will that affect the growth rate? And I saw the increased declaration in gold. Some minister, I think it was Trotman, compared to last year, was making the case that mining is doing well and that a lot of small miners have made this. It was the two large companies, the increased declaration from the two large companies. And so it's misleading, again, to say that the miners are doing well. Miners are having a hard time. They should help the mining industry too. We have asked for specific policies to help the mining industry. Some tax concessions, the royalty rate, etc. We've asked for specific concessions for that too. And so this thing about subsidy to sugar has to be linked to all of this. Any other question? All right then, thank you.
Just one general question. When you went to visit on the walkabout with the vendors,
Yeah.
you were subjected to a series of verbal onslaughts.
Yeah.
Is that in any way deter you? And does it make it harder for you to go on similar exercises?
As I said to the people, I was sitting in, before we left Freedom House, where some of the people who walked with me were gathered in the office of the executive secretary of the party. So I came in and they were telling me about the vendors. And I said to them, particularly the younger ones, I've always said to you, that there are times in government and in opposition you can't only want the garlands. You have to face also the abuses. And I said to them, when we go there, APNU can't allow us to do this. You're going to get cussing. So I said that to them. Many of them probably, because they're young and freshies and stuff like that, they did not believe me. So when we went on the part of the walkabout, we had some good things and stuff. They were glowing. And then, then it happened. And so I saw panic in some faces, but they recovered quickly. And that's a credit to some of our young guys and stuff. And I said, this is how it has been in Guyana. That was mild compared to 2007 and 2008 and the early period. Mild. You know, I was called Milosevic and all kinds of things in the early days, and it was mild. So they had to do that. They had to send those people to be disruptive. And I told our guys to expect it before we went out. So I expected it. It happened. APNU can't handle us going into areas that where they believe they own people, and they don't own anyone. The PPP will take its message. Remember I said before, after local government, I said we will first of all consolidate our base and where we have strong support. And we've been working hard to do that. And then we will start working in areas that where APNU is strong, taking our message to people there too. Because we're not opposition only for PPP people. We're opposition for the whole country. And so we'll continue. And the abuses will continue. And we will take our message. And some people will listen. I'm sure in that crowd there, you had some people who wanted to talk. In fact, they came and many of them quietly met me and stuff. They were intimidated. I saw one guy who was central part of the APNU campaign. I heard he works at OP now. Pushed down someone who was coming over to say hello to me. Pushed him down. They have him on tape. Yes. That's the kind of thing. And so people will start thinking themselves about those issues. Thank you.